purpose of the VTC is to aid and assist in the navigation of vessels in Prince William Sound and Port Valdez to prevent groundings and accidents.
Yes, that's true. We give them what information that we receive from participating vessels in the traffic center or in the traffic system, and pass that on to the vessels.
And certainly radar coverage is part of that ongoing process or means to ensure that there's no groundings or collisions, right?
For the area that the radar can handle, yes, that's...
Let me ask you this, sir. Prior to last Thursday, did you have any discussions with any Coast Guard personnel or Justice Department attorneys regarding your testimony here in this trial?
Judge, I object to that on the grounds of relevance. I don't know if he's going into privileged areas.
I only asked if there were discussions, Your Honor, not what the content of them were.
Objection sustained.
With regard to that radar coverage, sir, the manual, which I think you said you were familiar with there because of your job at the time, right? You were familiar with the VTS manual?
Yes.
It states, does it not, that Valdez Arm is being continuously monitored?
The entire system is being continuously monitored.
The area I was talking about is being continuously monitored by radar, according to the manual.
As best as the radar can do at the particular time, yes, that is correct.
The manual doesn't say as best the radar can do. The manual says, does it not, it is being continuously monitored, or you are being continuously monitored in Valdez Arm.
As best the radar can do, it is continuously monitored.
I agree with your, but I'm only asking you what you recall the manual itself saying without your caveat.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Right? And that manual is required to be on the bridge of every vessel that's also required to be part of the VTS system, right?
Yes.
So if someone were on the bridge of a vessel that's required to be part of the system, they pick it up, it says, if they were to read it, you are being continuously monitored in Valdez Arm by the radar at the VTC Center.
And if they were to read that, yes, that's what it would say.
Now, getting to your point, you're saying that the radar does not provide continuous coverage in all situations, then, right?
It's possible that it cannot.
Well, did it generally provide coverage, say, down to Busby Island?
Generally?
Generally.
Yes. Generally, yes.
What about Bly Reef?
That depends on how well the gear is working, weather conditions, and such.
Can you give the jury any idea about what kind of percentage of time you could see a tanker, let's see, say in the vicinity of Bly Reef, between Busby and Bly Reef?
I couldn't give you a percentage. That would be speculation on my part.
Okay. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, right? When it doesn't cover that area, is it not true, sir, that you don't notify the master of a vessel that's in the area? You don't tell them, get on the radio and say, you are now outside our radar coverage. We cannot see you any longer.
That is correct. I do not tell them.
When there is coverage in that particular area, let's say, again, in part of Valdez Arm, and on your radar you notice that the vessel is straying outside the designated VTS lanes, would you get on the radio and say you're a little off course, direct you to take course back in the lanes?
No, I would not. I would not direct any vessel to take any courses because I'm not there. I can't tell why they're going out of the lanes. My response would be, my radar shows you out of the lanes. What are your intentions? Or please take corrective action.
Have you ever directed a vessel to return to the lanes when they were outside?
I've never directed them.
You can, though, can you not?
Really, I can't. If they were outside the lanes, then I would call the OD, who would give me the answer, or would call the captain of the port, and then he would tell me what he would like to do, and then I would come back and say, by authority of the captain of the port, I am directing you.
let's back up here a little bit. Who's the OD you mentioned?
The officer of the day, excuse me.
What was your designation while you were there? Just watchstander? Is that what they call it?
Yes, sir.
Where would the OD normally be?
He would normally be below, not in the traffic center at the time. He would be in the vicinity. And
When you say below, does that mean one level down? I mean,
he would be outside. It could be one level down. He could be a level up.
and where would and then you said that that'd have to go to him, and then he'd have to go to somebody else?
He would go directly to the captain.
The captain
Of the port, the captain of the station.
Okay, that's the Coast Guard captain of the port. We mean Port Valdez. He's
Right.
the overall commander, right?
Right.
And he could be anywhere, right?
That's true.
So this would take some time. Is that what you're saying? You have to relay all these
Well,
orders
it's
up
not-
and orders down?
It's not 5 or 6 people. It's one other person who are the eyes and the ears of the commanding officer, and then they would contact him, and usually he's always in contact, or he tells you where he's going to be. If he's out of town, then the executive officer becomes the acting captain of the port. So there's always somebody there who I can.
Whether or not you actually direct him to return to the lanes or not, it's a fact, is it not, that you would at least notify him that he is not where he's supposed to be?
If I could see him on radar, yeah, I would know.
Well, we're making that assumption, of course, yes.
That's all it is an assumption.
Now, on the 23rd of March last year, during the latter part of your particular watch, say around 11 o'clock or thereabouts, was there, who else was on duty beside yourself?
I was the only one on duty on my part of on the radar watch. I was the only one on duty.
The manual says there's supposed to be 2 people on duty at all times. Is that correct?
There's 2 people in the traffic center. One of them is Valdez Radio, and the other is Valdez Traffic. So there were 2 of us there. The other person's name was Lowell White.
And what was his function on this evening?
He was there to as Valdez Radio. He responded to search and rescue. He gave weather broadcasts at specific times, and he just listened in on his part of the radio.
If I understand correctly, then he's not the guy that is on the radio to the vessels. He's just doing some other kind of radio.
Right. I'm the guy that's on the vessel.
You're on radio and also on the radar.
That is correct.
Now, let's assume if a hazardous condition arises, then is there any changes that occur as far as how many people are supposed to be there or on duty if there's, say, a hazardous condition at that time?
If a hazardous condition came up, I would call the OD, who would instantly be there.
On this evening at that time, late, let's say 11 o'clock to 12 somewhere, you know where the OD was at that time?
I don't know exactly where it was. No,
I mean, was he in the building?
I don't recall. He was close by. I could have got hold of him instantaneously. I don't know if he was in the building.
I assume you never contacted him on your watch prior to midnight for any reason involving potential hazardous condition.
No.
Ice, I think that you described from the ARCO Juno report, was not a hazardous condition.
It could be a hazardous condition. At the time, it was 4 hours earlier. That's the only ice report I had, was 4 hours earlier, so I didn't know what the ice conditions were at that time. The ice flows in and out with the tide. By the time the Exxon Valdez got down there, it's possible there could have been ice clean across the lanes. There could have been ice not in the lanes.
The radar you have certainly doesn't pick up ice in that area, does it? It's
It does not.
qualified, capable of doing that, right?
No,
You have to rely on basically people that are coming through the area.
that is correct.
Was there any other reports from, say, the motor vessel Bartlett, on the ferry system, Alaska ferry system?
I don't recall them calling me up with any ice reports. When they come up, I believe they were coming from Cordova. That they didn't give me any ice reports. No.
They normally, when they come up, if there's ice, they just kind of skirt Bly Reef, just kind of go by the edge of Bly Reef.
I'm really not familiar with their routes. They come up through that area there, but I couldn't tell you the courses that they come up through.
is capable of seeing a vessel. How accurate would you say it is to a given point? I mean, can you give me an idea in terms of yards or feet or something as to where it actually is?
Well, it's supposed to be accurate. You know, I'm not a technician. I plot them. You know, it's what it tells me. I only have one way of doing it, and that's with the radar.
Well,
I don't understand your question.
well, I think what my question is, if it's in a vessel's in a particular position, and you can see it's outside the lanes, is it outside by 100 yards? I mean, you know, from the point where, a given point, let's put it that way.
You could tell fairly close where it's at. Yeah.
I guess that's my question. What do you mean by fairly close?
Well, within a few hundred yards.
Going back to my other question about the motor vessel Bartlett, do you recall making a statement to a state investigator, Paul Burke? This would have been on April 10th, 1989.
I made a lot of statements to a lot of people. Could you refresh me with that?
Sure. I don't want to, I'm not trying to trick you or anything. I just want to see if you recall the remember the question, I've got page 13. Oh, and there was a Julia Grimes there, too, another state investigator at the same time, apparently a woman. You remember that?
I've talked to hundreds of people.
Okay. Well, you remember the question being asked to you, did they tell you, and I'm referring to the motor vessel Bartlett, did they tell you anything about ice in the lanes? Remember that question?
No, I don't.
You remember your response? I don't recall they were coming out of Cordova. They skirt right around Bly Reef. So really, you know, unless the ice is really thick over there, that they do not, you know, the ice will be over in here. But they just shoot around Bly Reef and come on up. You recall making that statement?
They do that from time to time. Yeah, Barlow does that.
By the way, who was the officer of the deck, I think you should call him, on that particular day, night?
Yeah, I don't recall.
How many are there?
Well, it depends. There's usually 4 or 5 that swap off, that stand different night duties.
There are 4 to 5 officers of the deck, and then there are, what, 4 watchstanders?
4, depending on, you know, incoming guys. If the guy's gone, then there's only 4. There's 5, there's 6, you know. Usually between 4 and 6 watchstanders.
Now, when you, let me say this, when we talk about the VCC, the Vessel Control Center, according to the manual, it is operated like the bridge of a ship, is it not? Is this as if you're on a ship, only you're on ground, land?
What do you mean by that?
Well, according to the manual, as I read it, sir, it says the way you operate is this as if you're on a ship.
Mr. Madsen's characterization of his questions. I think they're...
What part of it? Which part do you object to?
According to my readings.
Okay, the form of the question is the objection and also stands, Mr. Madsen.
Let me ask you a few questions in the meantime here, sir. You indicated earlier that you cannot tell a master of a vessel what course to take. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The reason for that is it not that you're not there? You're some distance away and you have radar sometimes, and say the radar is available. You also have radio communication, but you can't see what the captain can see.
That's correct.
So there has to be, I would assume, a little flexibility between your ability to do your job and the captain of a ship to do his. Getting back to my other question,
Is that a question or an answer?
I don't know, is that correct? There
Well,
has to be some flexibility?
Well, what do you mean by flexibility?
Well, you can't tell him everything that he can do, right?
No.
But at the same time, your function and your purpose is to aid and assist, to see that he doesn't get into trouble, that he doesn't ground the vessel, there's no collisions, right?
That's what we try to do, yes.
I want to call your attention to the Vessel Control Manual, Chapter 2, and it's called 2.2, General Watch Procedures. The VTC shall at all times be conducted in an efficient, professional manner.
Judge, I object. Is Mr. Madsen asking questions? Is he reading us into evidence? Is he asking to refresh the recollection?
I'll do that.
Is the question, is the document in evidence?
I don't know.
It is not, at this time it is not in evidence. Would you read this paragraph, sir?
Watch conduct standards.
Well, you can read it yourself if
Oh,
you wish.
okay, sure. I'd like to.
I just want to refresh your recollection.
6 minutes outside the Narrows, every 3 minutes through the Narrows, a data logger will give me this information. I don't manually plot it, but I have that information there, that historical information, so that if anything goes wrong, I can go back and I can plot the vessel down.
Excuse me, you say if anything goes wrong, you do what?
I can go back, if anybody, not if anything goes wrong, if anybody wanted to say, plot this vessel for me, then I'd go back to the vessel data sheet. I'd have the data logger output sheet of paper, and I'd go back and I'd manually plot it on there so that you could look at it and say.
So what you're doing with the data logger is not actually putting it on a chart that you can follow the course of the vessel. Is that right? You could do that, but
Yes.
you aren't doing it as a matter of
At the time, no.
Well, maybe I'm just confused, but what really is the purpose then of doing this, the data logger? If somebody asked you where was this vessel at that time, say a month or two later, said, what was its course? You go back and resurrect it.
That is correct, right.
Is that its only purpose?
It's historical data, it's there to, so that you can tell where the vessel's at and have it documented.
And that data logger still exists for the Exxon Valdez, does it? For that,
I would hope so.
23rd? Pardon me?
I would hope so. I don't have no idea, but I would really think that it is.
Yeah. When would it end, if you know, as far as Exxon Valdez is concerned on this night? Where would the data logger end? Were you lost it on radar?
Well, I could have ran it till then. I don't believe I did. I think you turn the data logger as soon as it gets through the Narrows. I usually give it 3 or 4 more plots and then shut the data logger down because you've got your information through the Narrows.
So you're really only interested in the portion through the Narrows, is that right?
That's right.
But you could, if you had the means and the capability, you could continue to monitor the progress.
You could, with that data logger, as long as you have a contact on the scope and you have it acquired, which means that your radar has acquired it and knows this contact is, it will, as far down as it can see, until you lose the contact, it will keep giving your 6-minute position reports.
Now, with regard to the radar, for people who may not understand how it works, could you describe it in layman's terms, with how what you look at and what you really have to determine the position of a vessel? Do you think you could do that? Or even, you think you could do a sketch on the board? That would be okay, too.
All I would be drawing you was a circle.
Okay. Can you describe what it looks like, what you're actually looking at?
What I'm actually looking at is a circle. And in this circle, as a sweep goes around, which you have a line that sweeps around, just keeps going constantly around a circle, takes a few seconds to make a complete sweep. And in that time, it will give you a graphic outline of outlying areas of a vessel, of the shoreline, and if you could look at a chart and then look at the radar, it would draw you the same picture. That's
Now,
about-
when you see a vessel, is this kind of a little green blip that you see on the screen?
Green, yellow, whatever color they have up there at the top, but it is a blip. If it's a long vessel, then it's elongated. You know, if it's a short vessel, then you only see your blip.
Would that depend on which direction you're looking at it, if it's long or short? I mean, if the vessel's going away from you.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. The closer it is, the better your radar works for you.
How far is Bly Reef from the BTC in terms of statute miles, if you know?
Not off the top of my head, I don't know. I could roughly say 15, 16 miles probably.
Can you determine the position that is the heading of a vessel at that distance with your radar?
At 15 or 16 miles, if I can pick them up on the radar, I could determine their heading.
Now, with regard to radar again, is there different scales you can use?
Yes, there are.
Would you explain that, sir?
Different scales. What they do is, if we have like a 1.5 mile scale, which just makes the entire screen large. You see a smaller area, but it's larger. You have a 3 mile scale, which gives you a 3 mile range from the center of the screen out to the edge of the screen. You have a 6 mile scale, which is the same thing, from the center of the screen outwards. And that just has, different radars have different ranges. 24 mile scale, 48 mile scale if you've got a powerful radar. What that does is it gives you a very small picture, but it's larger. You see more area.
You can cover more area.
Right.
On the radar you had on this particular evening, on the 23rd of March, what scales did you have available at that time?
1.5, 3, 6, 12, 24, 48. If you turn it up to 48, you've got a huge picture, but you only see about this much of your entire screen because it's so small. We rarely use that, never use it. I mean, if the techs are tuning it up, they'll go up to the 48 mile scale, but I've never used it for tracking purposes. I've never used a 24 mile scale for tracking purposes. Mainly used the 3, the 6, and the 12.
12 is the one that is kind of a limit, you might say,
Right.
for the capacity of the radar system.
Right.
you have. Was the radar on this particular night working or tuned up as well as you thought it could be?
It was working as well as it did. I'm not a radar technician. I couldn't really tell you. It would be I'd just be speculating, because I don't really know.
You didn't see anything obviously wrong with it, let me ask
No,
you that.
no,
Okay. Now, one of the radar sites is that place called Potato Point, is it not?
that's correct.
Do you know how far that is from Bly Reef?
10 miles, 13 miles, 13.2.
Now, lastly then, sir, I want to ask you a few more questions about the night, and I think you may have answered this already, but the Arco Juno did give you a nice report earlier about...
Approximately 4 hours earlier, yes.
You recall the ice report, what it said, what the captain or whoever it was, what they
I don't not verbatim. What he actually said, there were numerous small pieces extending across the lanes over towards Bly Reef Buoy.
And the Arco Juno, to your knowledge, deviated or went around the ice?
Yes. By then they were out of they were off my scope. I saw them make their initial turn to skirt the ice, and then I lost them off the scope. So I just took their word for it as to their intentions, what they were going to do.
That would be the normal situation if you couldn't see them on the scope, would it
Right,
not?
right.
The master says, I'm going to deviate to go around ice, you assume that's what he's going to do.
That is correct.
And when you were watching the Exxon Valdez this evening, you said it disappeared from your radar, the 6 mile scale, at about what point? Where'd you lose it?
Say it's southern tip of Rocky Point, between Rocky and Busby.
And did you switch to the next scale, the 12 mile scale?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you see it on that scale?
I saw it for it would take a sweep and the vessel would be there, and it would take 4 or 5 sweeps and it wouldn't be there, and I totally lost it altogether. So I switched back to the 6 mile scale. At that time, 6 mile offset to 10, which means that I can move move my radar from the very center of the screen. I can switch it up so that I have, instead of 6 miles on a 6-mile scale, I have approximately 10 miles to see. I switched it back to the 6-mile scale from the 12-mile scale because I saw it on the 6-mile scale. I didn't see it on the 12-mile scale, so it was pretty obvious that I would switch it back. I still had, on the 6-mile scale, approximately an inch to go on the scope, of which I saw the vessel. I watched it till it went off the screen, switched back, still nothing. Switched back to 12-mile scale, still didn't see it. I had the target stretcher on, which target stretcher stretches your target, makes it larger by, let's say, a third. It's just easier to see. If you have a small blip, turn your target stretcher on, sometimes it'll double the size. It just makes it easier to see. I had the gain turned all the way up.
So you were stretching the capacity of your equipment to its maximum at that scale?
That's right.
And you said you lost it altogether?
Yeah, after it went off the scale.
Weather conditions, sir, is a factor to be considered in whether you can see a vessel at that level.
That is definitely correct.
Snow squalls, rain, anything like this?
Anything like that, if you get, say if I have a vessel down by Rocky Point and I have a weather cell or a snow squall move through, you can actually see it on the radar. You can see it moving in. You'll have your shoreline going down, and then as this moved in, you'll see a big yellow mass coming across the screen. Usually, if this mass goes into the vessel, covers the vessel, you're going to lose the vessel completely. If it's between you and the vessel, you're probably going to lose your contact also. So weather is a major.
Do you recall any squalls or anything on your screen that you concluded might be interfering with your ability to track the Exxon Valdez at this time?
Not off the top of my head, I don't. I know that. See, I'm in a dark room. I can't see what the weather is outside. At the particular time, I don't recall if I did or not.
Of course, the weather could be different at your location as opposed to
That's
10
very
miles
true.
away, right?
Very true.
You get off duty normally then at midnight?
Quarter till.
Quarter till. Who replaced you on the 23rd?
Bruce Blauford.
What time did Mr. Blauford show up to replace you?
I believe he showed up at approximately between 11:30, 11:35 that evening.
Is it normal that he would show up a little earlier? Is that the normal routine? You come in a little earlier?
Right.
Is part of your duties then when you go off duty to explain to the person replacing you what's going on?
That is correct.
Did you tell Mr. Blauford that the Exxon Valdez was outbound?
That's correct.
Did you tell him any ships were coming in?
Yes, I did.
What was that, sir?
I told him that there were 2 ships approximately an hour out from Cape Hinchinbrook, Chevron, California, and Arco, Alaska, if I remember correctly. I told him that the Exxon Valdez was outbound. They were deviating around the ice. They were at 200 at 12 knots. They'd call us when they got through the ice with an updated ice report and updated ETA to Naked Island.
And from your experience, sir, if a vessel or master indicates he's going to deviate through the ice or wind his way through the ice, that means he's going to have to make course changes, does it not?
Yes.
And did you tell Mr. Blauford that you could not see him any longer on the radar?
That is correct.
And approximately what time was that, you know?
Well, it was before 11:45, between 11:30 and 11:45.
What time did you leave and physically leave the building?
I believe I walked out at 11:45, 11:46.
And with the information Mr. Blauford had, then he could have gone to radar and still tried to locate the Exxon Valdez. And if a snow squall or something had disappeared, it's likely, or possible, let's put it that way, possible he could have seen it.
Yeah, yeah, right. If the snow squall had moved through, it's possible. Anything's possible.
So when you left, in any event, it was off the screen and you didn't see it anymore.
That's correct.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any other questions.
Showing you what's been marked for identification as plaintiff's exhibit number 75. Do you recognize that?
Yes, sir, I do.
What is that?
It's Prince William Sound User's Manual for the Vessel Traffic Service.
And who is required to carry that manual?
All vessels participating in the traffic system.
And that would include tankers?
That's correct, sir.
Is this a fair and accurate copy of the Vessel Traffic Service manual?
Yes, sir, that's the one.
I would move for the admittance of what's been identified as plaintiff's exhibit number 75.
Can I see it again, counsel? 1 second.
Hearing no objection.
No objection, that's correct. That's right.
It's admitted.
Mr. Taylor, can you read the disclaimer that's on the first page of that manual?
Out loud, or just to
Yeah.
myself? Out loud? It says here, the mariner is cautioned that information provided by the Vessel Traffic Center is to a large extent based upon reports of participating vessels and can be no more accurate than the information received, period. The Coast Guard may not know all hazardous circumstances within the vessel traffic service area, period. Unreported hazards may confront the mariner at any time, period. Any conflicting circumstances or hazardous conditions should be reported to the Vessel Traffic Center immediately, period.
Did you, who has control over the tankers as far as their navigation when they're in the vessel traffic system?
The captain of the vessel.
Can you give them any orders to turn one way or the other?
No, I cannot. Not without contacting the captain of the port and I have to say, by authority of the captain of the port, I can't make any decisions of that nature on my own.
Now, Mr. Madsen asked you a lot of questions about warning tankers if they get off course. Can you do that if you can't see them on the radar?
I have no way of knowing they're off course, but I can't see them on the radar. Once they're off the radar, then it's totally radio contact.
And do you keep track of the tankers after you lose them on the radar?
That's correct. With ETAs to their specific check-in points, and that's the only way we can keep track of them.
Give the jury, what do you mean by that, ETAs?
Estimated time of arrivals. If they tell me that they're going to be at, say, Naked Island at 5 o'clock, then I'm expecting a call from them at Naked Island at 5 o'clock. And at that time, they would give me another estimated time of arrival at their next check-in point.
Do you mentally plot their course in between the time they call and the time they arrive at the place, just to keep in your mind where these tankers are generally?
I wouldn't say a mental plot. I keep in my mind, that it's going to take approximately an hour and a half to get down to Naked Island, a couple hours after that to get to their next check-in point. If they don't check in by that specific time, then you start wondering, well, where they're at. And at that time, I'll probably give them a call, ask them what's their location. They'll either tell me they're a little behind time, a little ahead of time, they forgot, sorry, and give me the next ETA.
Would you tell the jury, you have a chart board in the VTC Center. What's that used for?
The large one is what you're talking about? It's approximately 7 by 8. It's used just to keep track of the vessels. We have vessel tags, magnetic vessel tags of all the vessels that participate. And as a vessel leaves, we just go up there manually, just slide them down as they do their check-in points. Just slide them down so we know where they're at. So if you have 5 or 6 vessels in the system, it's easy that way. You can just visually look over at a glance and tell them where they're all at if you keep it up to date. And it's a very helpful piece of gear.
Now, the accuracy of the radar, Mr. Madsen asked you some questions about the accuracy of the radar. Does that, as to where it's located, does that depend on how far it is away from your radar?
I would say yes. The farther away, I think the greater degree of inaccuracy. But that, if you talk to a radar tech, he might tell you just the opposite. But that's just what I've found over the years.
Now, why is it that you don't plot after the vessel leaves the narrows? You don't keep the data plotting?
Well, basically because we're required to do it through the narrows by law. Outside the narrows, it widens up to a larger area, and we figure that they can navigate their vessel down through there without.
I didn't hear you?
They figure that we figure that they can navigate their vessel down through that area
By themselves?
by themselves. Yes.
Now, how long have you worked in the VTS Center as a watchman?
Altogether, approximately 7.5 years.
Have you ever in the course of that time had a tanker captain tell you that he was lost and ask you for where he was?
No. Not that I can recall, no.
Can you tell the jury why you don't use the 24 and the 48 mile scale on the radar?
Well, it makes it so small. It makes what you're looking at on your screen so small that actually your bearing marker, which it's an electronic bearing marker, which is a line that goes from your say potato point down. If you laid that on a 24 mile scale, put that over top of a vessel, you totally cover it, and it makes it so small that it doesn't help you at all. So that's why we try and keep them up on the 12 mile scale. We get a better picture on the scope.
May I approach your clip, John? Yes.
I'm showing you what's been marked for identification as plaintiff's exhibit number 79. Do you recognize that tape?
Yes, I do.
Why do you recognize that?
I initialed it.
And have you listened to that tape?
Yes, sir, I have.
And the taping procedure at the VTC Center, how is that done?
It's done on a double reel-to-reel tape. It works 24 hours a day. It's running 24 hours, running constantly.
And does it record the messages that you receive and the messages that you get?
That is correct, on the VHF.
Channel 13?
Channel 13, 16.
And is there a clock on it?
Yes, there is.
Keeps track of time.
A chronometer.
And is that done in the regular course of business, this recording of these conversations?
Yes, it is.
Have you listened to this tape, and does it provide a fair and accurate representation of the conversations that you had with the Exxon Valdez from the time the Exxon Valdez left the dock until you went off duty that evening?
Yes, sir, I believe it does.
And the references, have you read a transcript of that?
Yes, I did.
And is that transcript a fair and accurate representation of the conversations?
Yes, it is.
And where that says VTC, whose voice is that?
Mine for a good portion of it.
And that's up to the point where you were on duty, or you left.
Right.
And do you recognize any other voices on there?
I recognize the pilots.
And would that have been at the beginning of the...
Yes.
And to the best of your knowledge, are the times on the transcript accurate also?
Yes.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Mr. Taylor, just a few more questions.
Yes,
okay?
sir.
The manual exhibit number 75, which I think you have in front of you there, that you've identified,
Yes, sir.
has a Coast Guard disclaimer in it, does it not?
Yes.
Beginning? Okay. Basically, it says, does it not, that the information we are providing you is only as good as we can get. In other words, if there's a nice report from another vessel, we're just relaying that information on
That's
you,
correct, sir.
right? On the other hand, a vessel in the VTS system doesn't rely on radar from any other vessels, does it? You're not getting radar reports from other vessels, are you?
No, no.
The only radar coverage is by the Coast Guard BTC.
That's correct.
You also indicated now about the authority to give orders or give directions to captains of tanker vessels. The Narrows is one-way traffic, is it not?
That's correct.
If there's a vessel coming out, let's say it's in the middle of the Narrows, there's a vessel that's going to go in. You get on that radio, don't you, and you say, you cannot go in there now? Words to that effect? You are directed to slow down and do not enter until 0700 or something like that?
Right. I would say that they're not cleared until the other vessel clears the Narrows.
So there are certainly directions and controls that you can give a vessel in the VTS system.
For the one-way zone.
And
Right.
no other?
Just for the one-way zone. Other than that, you don't tell them what to do.
But you can certainly tell them that they are not where they're supposed to be, right? They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Oh, I can tell them that. That's correct.
And you can take it, when you say you can take it one step higher in the authority scale,
That's right.
and that person may do something about it.
That's right.
Exhibit number 79 you have there in front of you, sir. I just want to clear up one thing. Is that the tape of the outbound conversations or inbound?
Outbound.
Outbound, okay. And even if you don't have radar contact with a vessel, you still have radio contact, do you?
That's correct.
How far does your radio contact extend?
Well, it extends out. It extends outside of Cape Hinchinbrook. Extends completely through Prince William Sound. When I say completely, I mean in the area of the vessel traffic system. And I would say maybe 4 to 5 hours outside of Cape Hinchinbrook.
So certainly you have good radio contact between yourself and vessels, say, in the vicinity of Bly Reef.
Yes. Excellent.
And you could, even without radar, contact the vessel and say, how are you coming through the ice, what's the conditions, things like this.
That's true. I could do that.
The Exxon Valdez, between, say, 11 o'clock and the grounding, was the only vessel that you really had to monitor, did you not?
Right. Other than the Bartlett that came through earlier, but right. That's correct.
Is the Bartlett, is it required to be part of the VTS system too?
Mm-hmm. If you say monitor, I mean I'm still monitoring the inbound vessels out at Cape Hinchinbrook
By radio?
by radio.
Okay. But by radar, the Exxon Valdez was the only one that you could even try to monitor?
That's by radar.
By radar.
Yes.
And on the 12-mile scale, for instance, that doesn't limit you to just 12 miles, is it? You can actually...
I can offset it to approximately 15 to 18 miles, yeah.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Just two questions. Are you encouraged to have conversations with, well, let me withdraw that. Mr. Madsen asked you about conversations that you can have with the captain about icing conditions. Would you do that?
I'd call him up and ask him for an ice report, but at the time I was going to get an ice report and an updated ETA. We don't call him up and shoot the breeze or anything like that. It's supposed to be short and sweet, professional, right to the point, concise, however you want to word it.
Nothing further.
You're excused. Any further need for this witness?
No, Your Honor. No reason to recall when I know of.
All right. You're excused.
Does that mean I can go home?
For the use of the witness.
Thanks.
Call the next witness, please.
Mr. Skip Black.
Bruce Leonard Blandford, B-L-A-N-D-F-O-R-D.
Current mailing address?
Box 789, Valdez.
Your current occupation?
Pardon?
Your current occupation, sir?
Department of Transportation, U.S. Coast Guard Civil Service.
Mr. Blauford, where do you live?
In Valdez,
How long have you lived there?
12 and a half years.
And where did you come from before Valdez?
Charlevoix, Michigan.
Since living in Valdez, would you tell the jury what your jobs have been there?
I came to Valdez initially with the Coast Guard on active duty. I was assigned there in August of 1977. I was on hand when the pipeline and terminal and the vessel traffic service more or less simultaneously opened for business. I was assigned there as a vessel traffic center watch officer initially with other collateral duties. After 6 to 8 months, I took over the duties as the vessel traffic center supervisor and operations officer.
How long did you remain in the Coast Guard?
I stayed in the Coast Guard in Valdez until June 30th of 1980.
And what did you do after that?
For about a year, I had my own charter fishing business on Valdez. And approximately May or June of 81, I went to work for the local electric co-op, Copper Valley Electric, as their district superintendent.
Did you at some point join or start working again at the VTC Center?
Right. I had another job in between with Copper Valley Telephone, running a Radio Shack store down there for a couple of years. And in 1986, August of 1986, I went back to work for the Coast Guard as a civil service employee.
And what were your responsibilities when you went back to work in 1986?
The job opening which I had applied for and was subsequently received was that of the position of a civil service vessel traffic controller. Is the job title. GS9.
And would you tell the jury what your responsibilities were as a vessel traffic controller?
Much the same as those whom I had supervised as the operations officer, being in charge of the vessel traffic center, that being to be the actual watch stander to run the minute-to-minute business of the traffic center itself.
Would you tell the jury, is this located in downtown Valdez, the vessel traffic?
Yes, it is.
What type of equipment did you have available there?
We have primarily, to operate the vessel traffic service, a communications network which is connected by microwave with various VHF FM radio sites placed throughout Prince William Sound. We monitor the vessel's progress through the use of this communications equipment, and in areas where we have radars installed, also use the radar to get a visual presentation of the vessel's progress, particularly in Valdez Narrows.
Where does the do you first have contact with incoming tankers?
According to the regulations, they are to call us 3 hours prior to their taking arrival at Cape Hinchinbrook entrance. Depending on the vessel's speed, it's generally around 45 miles. They average about 15 knots.
That's 45 miles from where?
45 to 50.
Showing you what's been previously admitted as plaintiff's exhibit number 25. Can you give the jury an idea of where these tankers are located? Pull that out. When they call you 3 hours early, can you see it on that chart?
Well, generally, most of the traffic will be arriving from the southeast, coming up from the lower 48, either California or Puget Sound area, and they'll be coming from this direction. 3 hours from Cape Hinchinbrook Light, which would be, depending on their speed, somewhere around 45 or 50 miles.
Can you see 45 or 50 miles from Cape Hinchinbrook on that chart?
I don't believe so.
Where is the first place that you generally pick them up on radar?
Up in Valdez Arm.
Now, from the time that you make initial contact with them, the 3 hour time, how do you maintain contact with them until, say, they get to Bly Reef?
Okay. According to the regulations, which are contained in the little pamphlet here, the user's guide, their next reporting point is 1 hour prior to entering Cape Hinchinbrook, for which they're required to give relay certain other information. And then they confirm at that point that their ETA to Cape Hinchinbrook remains the same. Once they arrive at Cape Hinchinbrook, they call again and give us an ETA to a point, a beam of Naked Island right there. When they arrive at that point, they again call with an ETA to the pilot station, and if the vessel has a federally licensed pilot on board for this route, that pilot station would have been at Rocky Point.
If they don't have a federal pilot aboard, where is that?
That would have been Bly Reef.
Now, during this time that they're coming in, can you see them on the radar through Hinchinbrook and
No,
Naked Island?
we can't see them on the radar any portion of this route up until they arrive approximately at Bly Reef.
And what type of factors affect whether or not where the first point is that you can pick them up?
Mainly weather and sea conditions. Weather more than sea conditions.
How about whether or not the tanker is laden or unladen?
The unladen tankers coming in at ballast are riding much higher out of the water, probably presenting 2 to 3 times the target area as they would be if they're unladen. As they would if they were laden and loaded down into the water.
Now, were you called, was your shift at about 11:45 on March 23rd, 1989?
Yes.
Would you tell the jury when you got there that evening?
As best I recall, I arrived in the traffic center at about 23:40.
Who was there when you arrived at the Vessel Traffic Center?
Mr. Taylor was the off-going watchstander
So you
whom I was to relieve.
And what did you do when you got there?
He informed me of the pending traffic. He informed me that, of course, I looked at the status board, which is just a big blow-up of this